What's up, guys? Welcome to Elevate Elite, the Basecamp Podcast. My name is Donovan, and today I'm here with Mr. Samuel Wiseman. We're going to be talking quite a bit about merger and acquisition. My friend here is an investor. He helps owners roll up to eight-figure exits and helping people buy their first business, which was like kind of the primary thing that really hooked me on to one of the things that you were saying about yourself, Mr. Sam. And so we're going to get into those kind of conversational topics today, and I'm going to get into your brain about scheduling and how to kind of step back from the busy life and wanting to conquer the world and kind of
Mhm.
understanding what people's dreams are. So thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
Absolutely, Donovan. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you being here. I am so fascinated about the merger and acquisition world. I've been studying it monotonously for like the last like 2 or 3 years now, I think it has
Oh,
been. And the solar industry, unfortunately, is going through quite a bit of a bloodbath, as I'm sure you're aware. And that's where I'm from. And
yeah, save our
so
solar. That's right.
yeah, and so a lot of these companies they're looking to get bought up. Not a lot of them have assets. They try to think that their revenue, their gross revenue that they generated in the year is like what their business is worth, and then they don't understand like any of what that actually means when it comes to even like EBITDA, which is like one of the acronyms is used in merger and acquisitions as far as like what your business is actually worth. So tell me more about like how you navigate those conversations as an investor, somebody looking to like sell their business. What I guess we'll step into that first. That's just kind of what comes to the forefront of my mind here.
Yeah, real simple. So, I can only speak for myself. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a broker or anything like that. I can just tell you what I'm looking for, what my peers are looking for. Uh, so primarily when I go to buy a business, I'm personally a cash flow investor. There are other investors that purchase for arbitrage. There are other investors that purchase for depreciation or tax savings. I am personally looking for cash flow. So when I look for a business, I am looking to see what can I get this business for and how much cash am I going to get at the end. So EBITDA is nice for private equity when they can, flip your debt around, do stuff with their other portfolio and mess with your taxes, your amortization schedules. I care less about that. I'm looking for what is your net cash flow or your free cash flow at the end of the
Mm,
year, essentially. There are investors, and quite a few of them, that look for EBITDA, but in the small to medium enterprise, small to medium business, that kind of 500K to say 1.5 million in cash flow, we're looking for cash flow. We're not looking for EBITDA. Uh,
understood.
yeah, so that's kind of the first question, and um, I'm pretty, right to the point. A lot of folks they get in there and they try to build relationships with the owner, and that's great. If you're going to do like no money down deals, you're going to try to do creative stuff. But if you've got money, it's a nice lubricant, right? You don't have to really mess with a lot of the relationship stuff. It is helpful, but it's more helpful just to do 1,000 reviews as opposed to seven relationships you're going to build that might not go anywhere. So. I just crack right into it. Hey, I'm not going to waste your time. What's your revenue? What's your cash flow? How many employees do you have? I'm looking for net cash flow margin as well. So I want to see about 20-ish%. Ideally higher 30, 40%, is really what we're looking for, but minimum 20%. Customer concentration is a really big issue, which means that more than 20% of your total revenue cannot come from a single client, or you're going to get disqualified from the SBA. And something to look out for that not a lot of people think about is also your cash flow concentration. There may be a situation where, say you're making 10 million a year in sales, but you're getting, just for easy numbers here, 1% on nine of those customers and then 80% on your last customer. That's also an issue you want to look for. And then finally, we're looking for age. We don't want to see anything that's, a flash in the pan working with trends. It might be weird, it might be unique, something I've never heard of, but I want it to have at least 7 years at the absolute bare minimum, if not 10, 30, 50, 100 years of financials.
Right. Wow. Okay. That is a much different strategy than what I am familiar with originally, which is that private equity side, having these guys come in and just take a look at the books and like, what can we do with this, even if it's just a distressed asset?
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely a different game. It's a fun game. I've played that game. It's a harder game to get into as a principal, and definitely the path to get there is to do some of these smaller deals for free cash flow. Then you work into depreciation, and then you work into arbitrage, and then kind of at that point you're raising funds.
Interesting. Okay. My
Yeah,
one of my life goals is to eventually open up my own family office. And so I'm trying to learn a lot more about what that means because there are a lot of these boomers that are starting to retire and they don't have anywhere to put their business. Their kids don't want it. They don't
yeah.
really know how to like move it. They don't really want to sell it off to private equity that are like big companies, but they want to do something with it where they're still involved and private equity doesn't usually give them that option sometimes from what I understand.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really big issue, and honestly, that was the thing that got me into mergers and acquisitions originally. I've got a pretty floral background.
I
My
love
entry into
it.
thank you, yeah, into my career, I was an Eagle Scout. Thought to change the world, I had to be an artist, and ultimately realized that business is really what drives the world, and art is effectively just advertising. If we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of it. Um, and ultimately yeah, realized that there are 32 million businesses in America. 12 million of them are owned by baby boomers. 8 million of those are going to shut their doors because nobody wants them, because nobody has the knowledge to go and take them. And then at the same time, in the last 10 years, we've seen a thousandfold increase in private equity companies beginning and to purchase all of these other roll-ups. There's 4,000 roll-ups in home services. And by and large, it's folks that call me a blasphemer. It's folks that largely grew up silver spoon. They learn this industry from their parents. And I mean the greatest book you talked about starting a family office, probably the greatest book out there on it, or at least one of the starting foundational books on the subject, is called um, Pioneering Portfolio Management. It was written just before the '08 crisis. He starts to talk about he can figure out that it's starting to happen. His name's David Swenson. He was the chief investment officer at Yale for 30 years or something like that. I think died in '09. And yeah, he just mentions that it is these folks that are trained to do this, and he was the first one to come out with like a horribly complicated document for the rest of us, but that was only, 13 years ago, something like that. Then you've got
Right.
Bridger Pennington, and I think in 2015 is probably the only other example I've seen of really democratizing fund knowledge, and that's still like 70, $80,000 to get into. So you have all these people that clearly have a lot of means, have a lot of time on their hands to be able to learn this stuff, and they're just ripping money, out of our communities. And because people like you and I, didn't grow up learning mergers and acquisitions, we're having a hard time, getting into the field. But I think, I'm kind of getting real passionate about this, but our last names are literally built around the companies our ancestors owned, right? Kinzer, I imagine, has something to do with family. I don't know. Wiseman, obviously, you can kind of guess what my family did, but so many of our family histories are tied up in the trades that we used to own. And so I think it's imperative that more people learn mergers and acquisitions and start to get these community businesses back into their community.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and I love the passion. I agree 100%. My family, unfortunately, comes from that farm life, and so those are
Mhm.
the ones that are taken advantage of the most. Unfortunately, they're not very
Yeah.
business savvy usually. You look at some of these like older oil movies, and they move in on farmland, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna do this and that," and they're like, "I don't know what any of that means, but it sounds like it'll work out for us, and we're having a tough time right now, so I guess we got to give it a shot." So
Yeah.
ends up not working out for them, I don't think, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's very intriguing to me because I never thought about like the other side of the merger and acquisition world where it's not so much gatekept by those richer families that you're talking about, and you have the ability or capacity to step in and essentially just kind of like construct a deal almost out of nothing, just to give your time and effort and blood and sweat and tears on the front end, I guess, of what you'll receive on the back end, which is the company, you know.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily needing $1 million to go and buy a company. You can structure that contract, that deal, that agreement to be worth $1 million, but you don't necessarily need to pay the $1 million, right?
Exactly. And without that education, you'll think your whole life you've got to brute force it, when in reality, it's much, much easier than you might think.
Yeah, yeah. And I apologize. I kind of did get ahead of the conversation here just because I'm very intrigued. But I like to have these conversations and essentially pull people what I deem is off the mountain and bring them back to base camp and
Yeah,
have these conversations at base camp with these people who, like you're mentioning, just don't really have the education or the knowledge. They don't know where to get it. They don't know who to have those conversations with. They don't even know
yeah,
like what merger and acquisition or M&A is to begin with. They just know that that's what happens. They just know companies get bought up and sold all the time. Companies go out of business, somebody comes in and buys them up, opens up Circuit City, and then that doesn't work out for them either, right? And
yeah.
so tell me a little bit more about your background and like really what got you into merger and acquisition and passionate about this entire subject.
Yeah, absolutely. So, cheesy as it sounds, I graduated high school wanting to save the world. Like I said, I was an Eagle Scout. I was an artist and just did everything I could to figure out, what was wrong with the world, and then, how do we try to fix it? And at the time, I thought it was just a messaging issue, and I went to school for music, and uh, long story short, I started my own music festival series, and unfortunately, I was an artist. I didn't understand anything about business, so I went bankrupt when I was 25, and then a friend of mine, bless his soul, knew a lot more about business. And 6 months later, all of my fans were going to his shows, and he's clocking 40K in profit a month, and I'm, driving for Uber, after my fall from grace kind of thing. So I realized at that moment that I had to learn business, that I had to become a businessman. I had to know everything there was about finance and marketing and sales. And I wound up doing seven figures in ticket sales for another company, another seven figures in sales for sponsorships, also for music festivals. And then the pandemic hit shortly after that, and I was like, "Wow, I got to figure out something else to do." So I read every business book I could get my hands on. I'm a pretty fast reader, so that was like one a day, one every other day for like 2 years, something like that. Took a course a month. Eventually found two amazing mergers and acquisitions trainers. One is Roland Frazier, and the other Kyle Mallion. Kyle is definitely the best for beginner mergers and acquisition folks. He gives you kind of like a paint by numbers process to get you to 300K a year in your pocket kind of thing. Where Roland teaches you like chemical color theory and like how to, invent new shades of things you've never heard of. You know what I mean? And so he is absolute genius. And so when you start to move into those upper echelons, then Roland will teach you all of the fancy no money down things. Someone that I met and was able to understand what he did because of Roland, regularly purchased companies, pull in, 50, $300 million in revenue for less than a nickel. So the types of things you can do in mergers and acquisitions, that doesn't even sound real. So I'm just going to repeat what I said there. This man regularly purchases companies doing $300 million for less than the change he has in his pocket. The mergers and acquisitions is crazy.
Wow. And what is that predicated on? Is that just like a relationship that he's built or like the name he's built for himself or like what is
Numbers,
that built
bro.
on?
I mean, there's
Numbers?
probably some of his name because there's some like after things that he does when he puts the dime on the table to sign the deal. But effectively, that one. Yeah, I'm not under an NDA, whatever. I just met the guy at a freaking event. But the gist of it is that, let's say you're a public company, you're doing whatever, $10 billion a year in sales, and your margin is $1 billion just for easy numbers. And it would be $1.5 billion, but you have a department that's losing half a billion every year. You can't just close that department down because you're going to lose all these people their jobs, that you have like a fiscal responsibility to this like branch of the company essentially. So what this dude will do is go, hey, you're losing a bunch of money on that company. I have the money to turn this company around. If I can take it off your books, your stock immediately goes from 1 to 1.5 billion in cash flow, and then whatever your multiple is on top of that, you immediately get a stock boost because you've lost the losses on this other company. Then I'll put in my 50 million or whatever and then revamp the company, turn it around. You don't have the headache anymore, but your shareholders get an immediate boost.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah,
I,
here's a nickel.
I right, and I remember I had a conversation with the guy out in Las Vegas. He owned some dealerships, car dealerships out in the East Coast, and very intriguing guy. But he mentioned that he actually makes money when he loses money. So he was
Mm.
telling me about like how he would give away like a free transmission to somebody because it got them to buy more cars. He was like, if I give away one transmission for three cars, why wouldn't I do that? And
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
absolutely.
way, the way he talked about it was like losing money to gain more money. And he was like, I have to show a loss more often than I need to show a profit. And
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, how does that doesn't make sense in my brain, but now it does, right?
Yeah,
Now that
there's
I've
so
been
many
learning
nifty
about it.
things like that. Like if you purchase a company that is at a loss and you've got a company that's at profit, then you get to wash out your taxes. That's a pretty common one. But yeah.
Right. Yeah. The distressed asset approach was another thing that like threw me through a loop. I was like, people want to buy like companies that suck. And they're like, yeah, actually they do. And it's like called a distressed asset. I'm like, what?
Crazy stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation with you is because I know number one, you're passionate about it. It's like this thing where I think you see it through the lens than a different lens than other people see it through. When you talk to business guys, that it's very like a logical type like math only kind of lens. And
Yeah.
I feel like with you, it's almost like this visual representation of art, like you're mentioning, where like you can kind of see the symphony that is like unfolding as businesses kind of move through the network of what all this is, like the life that we live,
Yeah.
right? Because it affects all of us. If a company gets bought up, credit card company gets bought up or whatever. Now I was listening to David Ramsey. He was talking about like somebody comes and calls your notes in. They're like, hey, I don't really like this guy, 26 years old, has a lot of debt on the books with us. Let's go ahead and reel that in a bit. And then all of a sudden your life falls apart and you're not as rich as you once were. And
Yeah.
so a lot of that stuff is super interesting to me. What have you seen that is like the best path for people that don't understand anything about this? What is like the best route to go if they're not like a book a day kind of person like you are?
Yeah. Yeah. And rare to find those people, to tell you the truth.
Oh,
So
100%. I think 50% of Americans don't read a book a year.
that's right. That's right. Yeah. A single one. So it is, yeah. You don't find many folks, especially that read business books at this level. So it is, yeah, I would say the number one thing where people mess up all the time. I mean, this is an hour-long podcast. You know what I mean? So you're only going to get so much information out of it, and you can read. You listen to 1,000 hour-long podcasts, and you don't know if it's specific to your information or what order the information is in or when you do certain stuff. You can create mental models, but ultimately it's going to be the best thing to get a coach. And Kyle Mallian is absolutely the best initial coach for anybody getting into the system. There's a few other books out there, but Kyle will lead you straight. If you don't have a lot of time, he's definitely the best person to do it. And if you don't have that kind of money, find somebody with that kind of money.
Understood. Yeah, I think I've always come back to like community, getting around the right people, having these conversations. If you happen to be in my group, Elevate Elite, obviously, like you're in there, right? And so it's like, hey guys, I have this question about merger and acquisition. Don't really understand it. Where do I begin? It's helpful to have that community to like step into and like not even know who you are, but then have you drop Kyle's name, and then all of a sudden that connection kind of is created, right?
Yeah.
So getting out of your own way and like trying to be more humble about like getting that advice before you have it or that knowledge before you have it. How are you able to like be so, I guess, like driven to get that information after
Mm.
just being like kind of, not necessarily stepped on, I wouldn't say, but surpassed in a way by your competitor that you had mentioned that was doing 40 grand a month? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
how
yeah.
how do you build that drive or that ambition, or you know what I mean? Like I'm trying to find the right words here.
Good question, man. That gets us into some existential conversations. That's probably a great question in my life is how do you build dreams in other people? I mentioned to you before the call. I one time asked 3,000 people their dreams because I was very very curious. How do you ignite people? And I think it's fear and pain. That's an awful answer, but people who are happy are chill, and they're comfortable, they're content, and it's great for them. And this is a crazy thing is that 80% of the people I asked, what's your dream? They didn't have one. 15% had one and weren't pursuing it. 5% had like a very specific dream and they were starting to put plans together. 1% was probably following it, maybe 0.5% at that point. Uh, but by and large, and this was the thing that blew me away, was that the 80% were the happiest people. Like
Yeah.
they had the fewest doubts about life. They had the fewest existential questions. They cared the least about politics, you know? Uh, Everyone else was like traumatized. And I think it's fine to not have dreams. I think it's fine to not be ambitious if you're comfortable getting hit by the tsunami. You know what I mean? If you're cool, yeah, you're cool chilling on the beach all day, tsunami's coming. If you're cool with that, damn, enjoy the sand. You know what I mean? But
Mm,
we have that parable of the grasshopper and the ants for a reason. You know what I mean? Like they're chilling out there having a lazy ass time. We might hate our fucking lives for a while, but we're gonna survive the winter. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
and so for me personally, my father was a big fan of Ray Kurzweil, who was the director of engineering at. Do you know Ray Kurzweil? Uh,
I don't
Great
know.
scholars. He was a director of Google's engineering for a long time. He was
Okay.
also a sponsor of the Human Genome Project and has been a big proponent of immortality and a big futurist. And so when I was 19, I believed his words that AI was coming in our lifetimes. This was 20 years ago, something like that. And I knew it was going to come one day. I did not think it was going to come this fast. But I've had kind of the specter of death, at my back since I was 19 years old, knowing this stuff was coming.
Mm,
And frankly, everybody listening, every single job can be taken by AI. If you think there isn't one, you can be proven wrong today with a YouTube video. There is something out there doing parts of your job. It will take another year or two to blend that shit together, maybe 30 years for society to catch up, but like you're going to be 50, 60, 70 when that happens. What are you doing? What are your kids doing? What is your generational lineage legacy doing at that point? You don't have time.
yeah, I mean, a lot of it is going to be predicated on the creative, in my opinion. You talk about like art and the way that you see business, you're going to have to see business through that lens creatively in order for you to get through it, because that's the only thing that AI can't really do, right? Like you can kind of prompt it logically, rationally. You can make it create a picture, you can make it create a video. It will eventually create it on its own, but also I think that it will value human creation in that creative art kind of like feeling sense, the emotion sense.
That is maybe a different conversation in this podcast.
For
But
sure.
yeah,
The reason I bring that up is because I believe that community kind of sparks that. I believe that having these conversations around the campfire, that's kind of where it all stemmed from, was like the storytelling aspect, telling a story, and then that builds into like an emotion, and that emotion invokes an interest. That interest becomes solar or a merger and acquisition or whatever. And you can see it through a different lens than most people in that industry because they're involved with it for 40 years. They can't
yeah,
see it through that same lens until you step in and you change the entire dynamic. And it's because of that creative lens, right? And so that's kind of what I mean
yeah.
is that's where I think we can keep up, maybe.
Maybe I think it'll be that's where we're going to be able to dominate each other for a certain amount of time. I mean, I skipped Christmas and New Year's this year, with again kind of the AI specter at my back. I try not to scare everyone else because it's like it's not good table manners, frankly, but it is all I think about. I just don't think so. I made a post in May and I asked people like, what jobs do you think are can't be taken, and someone commented the only thing I thought was like, okay, you might have a point there. This guy said comedy, right? 3 months later, Sora came out with its comedy thing, and it was funny. It was really
Yeah.
funny, and it is funny today, So like, there's nothing. It is going to get down like real estate is going to be the last thing that's valuable, and then and only then if you can protect your real estate from everybody else when the AI collapses governments.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that unfortunately a lot of people have that perspective in regards to AI being kind of like this demise kind of situation, this like dystopian situation. I like to kind of think of it as the utopian situation on the other side of it, where it's you get to enjoy the resources and favors that it provides as opposed to like having it take from you. Does that make sense?
And I agree, and that's why we named our company Protopian is kind of that future city concept. We are building towards a better world. And the folks who control the land and the robots at that point, absolute 100% paradise. And if you are one of those people, or you are aligned and very close to one of those people, you will have an amazing, incredible, like life we could have only have dreamed of in the movies, for our last 100 years, whatever. Um, and it is my
Hmm.
goal and my intention to get as many people under that reality as possible.
Yeah, and that's kind of what my question was originally in the very beginning of this conversation before we actually started recording was a lot of these guys they end up reaching those peaks. They summit to their success level and they happen to see that sign that says now what.
Mm,
A lot of these guys they don't know what now what is. Like they've hit that 100 million, 500 million, $1 billion mark, whatever the case may be for them. And they don't know how to stop. Like they don't know how to like get out of business. They don't know how to stop
mm,
working. They don't know how to like enjoy their life and get to that protopian, utopian kind of like level in the world where it's like it's all fucked, it's all messed up, it's all broken, it's all gonna be burnt, it's all gonna fall apart, blah blah blah. Right? They're like the cup is half empty kind of people.
yeah.
How have you seen people kind of navigate that at that high level?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I would ask that question in the dreams and people would go, I don't know, then the follow-up question to get an easy answer to not stop the conversation is, all right, if I gave you $15 million, what would you do with the rest of your life? And then usually there's an answer. It's travel is usually the answer.
Yep.
But then if they say make 100 million, then you just increase the answer by 10x, every time. All right, what about 100 million, a billion, 10 billion, a trillion? And eventually, every now and then you'll get those dudes that are like, I'll keep growing it forever. You know what I mean? Okay, well, you should go be a fund manager. You know what I mean? Like, that's clearly what the fuck you need to be doing. Uh, 99% of other people will eventually say stuff like, I would spend time with my family. I would build a charity. I would cure disease, solve hunger. And then you have your answer. And that's really what they should be doing at the end, right? If you have $30 million and you're bored of making money, which, like, great, a lot of people get there and it is definitely a thing that happens. Stop trying to make money. Go solve like a world issue. You know what I mean? Like, pick one. Are you clearly good at making shit happen? Like, solve something amazing, right? Like, for all of human history, up until we invented ROI tables. Actually, it's a fun book, but the rich were philanthropists. The Medici's, the Habsburgs, the Charlemagnes, the Roman emperors, right? I mean, they built things for society to last forward. There's the
Even Carnegie, Rockefeller. I mean,
Carnegie.
like,
Yes, great
yep,
example. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, these guys, I mean, you kind of have two different directions, right? Where we talked in the beginning, you had mentioned like how do you spark people to maybe get interest in merger and acquisition? Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's the creative idea that you bring to somebody that's in merger and acquisition that is able to help solve that world idea or the world problem, right? Where it's like, Doctors Without Borders, a big issue that they have is really funding. And
Yeah.
then doctors, like actually creating more doctors to actually do the work of a doctor that
Yeah.
actually is a problem.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was looking up like what would it cost to actually fully fund somebody to go and like become a doctor, right? And it's not that much. It's not that
Mm,
crazy, especially when you look in the merger and acquisition world where hundreds of $1 millions is tossed around casually,
casually.
like casually.
Yeah.
And a doctor is going to cost maybe like 250,000 to get like a full degree and like go be a doctor. It's not a
Yeah.
surgeon, but like you're filling the space. Do you think AI will be able to take over some of those like human problems like that, where you have lack of labor in like say solar roofing, you have lack of labor in medical, you have teachers who don't really want to do the job anymore, right? We're kind of like
Yeah.
lost with even education on like what route that's going to go. So like, what do you think as far as the creative when it comes to mergers and acquisitions? How will those industries change some of these like bigger sectors of education, medical, energy, things like that? How do you see the merger and acquisition world changing some of those sectors?
With robotics in particular, you're saying?
Robotics, AI, it sounds like you may know, like not maybe not know, but you have like a speculation of some sort based on your research.
Yeah. So we'll start to see robots in the trades next year, probably June, August is my guess. Real simple stuff at first, picking up buckets, carrying beams, things like that. it'll very rapidly advance. These robots are operating something like 100,000 hours every single day just because they're able to, kind of quantum accelerate or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and then beyond that, we're seeing other things like paint has gotten really good. This is something nobody really thinks about. We all think chemicals are mature, but paint has recently had an advancement where coats of paint on your home no longer need 5 years you don't repaint in 5 years, you repaint in 25 years. Um, so things like that are also impacting industry. So we're going to see a lot of industries disappear or shift or merge entirely. The case, as through all of human history, is that different technologies it will eventually merge together. We began with the spear and the cutting knife, and eventually we got the sword. We moved on to the fax and the scanner, and eventually merged into the copy printer, concept. Cell phones and everything else, right? So we will see this happen with businesses, especially yeah, as AI is able to collapse the cost of anything, it decreases the barrier to entry, which then decreases the amount of margin anyone can take. The defense to that previously was knowledge, but with 3D printing and again AI, that stops becoming a barrier. So the only real defense at a certain point is hard materials. How long it's going to take for that to happen, I'm not sure. I would wager a lot of money it happens in our lifetime. Bill Gates thinks the next 10 years. Claude, people like Alex Becker are saying the next 2 to 3. Um, but yeah, how's that going to affect M&A in general? Um, we will see a lot of smaller businesses get wiped out. They're great now because they're personal and because they've got the lay of the land. Um, AI salespeople, again, AI robotics is just going to drastically undercut those folks that can't make the capital expenditures to compete. Um, and then in general, we're seeing massive, massive consolidation anyways. We're seeing a huge disparity in wealth gap from this consolidation of businesses and services. Uh, yeah. So that consolidate as fast as you can, get a company as fast as you can, sell as fast as you can, get land as fast as you can, and protect your family. Those are the changes I see.
Boy, that that is unfortunate because it feels like the conspiracy that was perpetuated a little before COVID was the plan of 2030, right? The NWO, the 2030, whatever. A lot of that was predicated on the fact that there will be like no way to make money again. It's
Yeah.
really just like UBI essentially, right? Where it's like everybody gets like resources, you need water, water exists, but the water exists because you have some kind of input. What do you think that input will become if not human? Like, do you have any speculation at all of what that would look like?
It'll exist for a little while, but like think of even like fall off effects, right? I mean, the Great Depression was 20% unemployment. Goldman Sachs says that this is going to affect 60% of jobs in the next 2 years. So if it's just like white collar workers, say it's HR as an industry gets wiped out, or accountants that gets wiped out, drivers,
Right.
right? That's 30% of American workers. Even if we can't solve firefighting and cops and labor, we now have 30% of the American workforce that is starving and looking for
Yeah,
work.
they're not gonna just all become cops.
Yeah, they're not gonna, or if they do, or maybe not cops, but if they're all gonna become day laborers, right? We're gonna have, I mean, you're gonna be working for minimum wage, if that even, right? You're gonna be an individual contractor. I think Uber, is getting paid like what, $3, $4 an hour on some days, something like that. Seeing the lawsuits out there.
Yeah.
So that's what it's going to become for most people, unless you own products or services that directly service wealthy people and then progressively wealthier and wealthier as more and more money continues to concentrate. The top 1% in 2018 had 25% of America's wealth. Today it's 44%, and it's just the top 1%, not even including the top 10%. So it is progressively wealthier and wealthier folks you'll have to cater to until you can get land and separate yourself from the system.
Hmm. So it's really like we're basically coming back full circle where we'll all just be like farming our own land essentially, And some will go like live in analog world on the land, and then the others will step into the metaverse and live inside of the metaverse essentially.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. If they even are allowed to survive, at that point. I have a conspiracy theory that most of society is allowed to flourish because we need a huge system to solve cancer. But once we have robots that can do everything that solves cancer, then suddenly I don't need anybody outside my family. I've got cancer solved.
Yep, and I've talked about that before on Elevate Elite, where it's like a hierarchy. If you look at how royals used to live, kind of a little bit off topic, but you have like your king, and then you have basically his family, and then you have people that are a part of the royal family, not necessarily in the family, but they were a part of it. And then you
Yeah.
have like the rest of everybody, right? And kind of have like different subsets, landowners and things like that, land barons, and then you have like knights and jesters and stuff like that. Still technically a part of the royal family, but not of a valuable service. And then like peasants, right?
Yeah.
If you look at like how much money you need to not be a peasant to just get into nobility, just get into like being a jester, what would you speculate that number to be? I have a speculated
Wow, that's so
number.
funny.
What do
I
you
actually
think it
think about that
is?
all the time. My favorite book of all time is called Crossing the Chasm, and they actually use this terminology. So in any given market, 80% of the profits is going to go towards the king or the royal, essentially. Then 15% of the profit is going to be split between two or three nobles. And then the remaining 5% of the profit is split between thousands and thousands of merchants, which are to us four to $500,000 incomes essentially. So then
Yeah,
everybody
those are like the small mom and pop shop businesses, right?
exactly, exactly. So
Yep.
then it's 100 times less than that are your average peasants. So that's the ratio given in Jeffrey Moore's Crossing the Chasm.
I'm gonna have to read that one because
Favorite book of
that
all time.
is
Yeah,
that is something that I unfortunately fixate on often, where it's like if you look at even the billionaire class, they are so far removed from even a 100 millionaire that
yeah.
it's not even like, oh, that's close. Like, oh
They're
no, I
closer
could
to
I
us. Yeah.
exactly, like they're closer to us than they are to the billionaire, and even $100 million, like that is just infinite amount of money to live on forever. You mentioned get money, get land, and protect your family. How much money do you think you need to protect your family?
Man, you're asking the great questions. So it depends on how many people you want and how long you think the apocalypse is going to last. I'm a pretty deep prepper here, frankly.
I
Uh,
love this.
if you okay, so at the risk of not sounding crazy, let's say there's a pretty
Unfortunately, all of this sounds crazy because it's reality right now. So it
you
is
know what,
kind of
fuck it, let's
crazy.
go. You know what? Let's go with
Yeah,
the worldview. So I'm gonna just go into the deep end here. So let's imagine it's like Terminator style, right? It's fucking Matrix. You've got AI wars because it's drone swarms that we're throwing at each other, right? And like you
right.
keep up with the drone technology, they're making drones out of cardboard boxes and fucking remote controls, right?
And some of them are like this big.
This big, and they're like 5 cents to create, So you now have
Yeah,
armies for like $1,000 or something like that, and just flying around everywhere. So like the level of defense, we might have lasers. It's probably the only thing that's going to protect us. But my guess is that we'll all live in kind of these little peaceful zones, and then outside of that zone is hell, and it's going to be constant. And if you ever let up on that hell, your zone is gone. If you've ever played Warcraft at a competitive level, Warcraft 3, which I haven't, but I've watched the games, that's how stuff is going to work. Is that if you let up for a second in producing units, your village is wiped out. That's how you get dominated at the top levels. And so AI, of course, is going to be at the top level, constantly producing, constantly attacking, constantly defending. That's going to be outside your zone to create. I'm not an engineer, so I start to lose the math there. But
right.
to get
Real quick,
essentially,
just like in these zones, you're talking like Grok would be a zone, Chat GBT would be a zone,
kind
potentially.
of like Kinzer would be a zone, Wiseman would be a zone. The zones are not going to be that big because misinformation.
We wouldn't want to combine zones.
Unlikely. And the reason for that, and so there's actually two great writers on this subject, and they're on opposite sides of the political spectrum, which makes me see kind of a zone of truth in this, is Noam Chomsky, who's like 95 or something, and he was like the founder of like humanitarian thought of the last 100 years or something. anthropological thought. I need to anyway. And then Curtis Yarvin is on the other side, who is I think the founder of the Dark Enlightenment, big mind behind Peter Thiel, who funded J.D. Vance to get into the White House. And so they both believe in these kind of like anarcho-communist cities. Curtis calls them freedom towns, and Curtis sees them as being, or not anarcho-communist, sorry, anarcho Confederate. And so Curtis sees them as being run by monarchists, where Noam sees them run more like tribes. But they both agree that because of misinformation, we're going to start to lose the ability to accurately tell what's going on outside of our village, essentially. So information will break down. And then when you have the ability to grow your own food, create your own weapons, you start to not need everybody on the outside world. So it starts to become a more human face-to-face existence again, because you literally cannot trust your phone, you cannot trust your video at that point. So that is the breakdown that both Noam and Curtis are predicting. So we will exist in kind of these peaceful zones effectively, and then within that, it'll be automated. You'll have your food automated, your water automated. Eventually, we'll probably start to get together, but there's going to be a lot of turmoil before we figure out how to start to trust other communities again. So that's the
Jeez.
yeah.
So like these bunkers that they're building, why do you speculate that they're building bunkers? Is that like for the drone warfare, or like just natural
Right, because it's
fallout, or like
yeah, both, right? Because it's
well,
underground. I didn't want to say the underground thing because I don't want to sound more crazy, but you're right. The billionaires are
it's
literally building
happening.
underground. They're
Literally
building underground
happening.
bunkers. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
it's
you
literally happening.
survive. That's how you survive. And they're going to bring their families in there. And you need about 3,000 people, give or take, to not pollute the gene pool after 200 or 300 years. 5,000 if you want to keep it safe and not have to like plan. In the
Oh my
East,
goodness, man.
it's about $300,000 per family of four and about $100 million for that entire population, give or take.
Ugh, it's like a pit, you know? So that's yeah, that's a lot of money. I mean, so you need
5,000
you
families with a house is effectively what it is. Like a nice,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then like I can't remember exactly the numbers, but it's quite a bit of acreage also, because that was like one of these weird natural feelings inside of me that I have where it's like you're gonna have to have this community. You're gonna have to have your people that you trust, the family that you grew up with. Like I love my family's crazy, but I love my family. Like
your
I
family.
trust them, you know, their family. And I do believe that one of the main reasons why a lot of these families, unfortunately, including mine, are a little crazy is because of lack of money, lack of resources, lack of financial
Good.
prosperity. You know, they don't really know what they don't know, living day to day on survival mode, and don't really know how to like get out of that.
That's
And
right.
you know, kind of unfortunately almost at the end of their life, you know, they're 40, 50, 60 years old. And so
Yeah.
it's tough to have clarity of thought when you're getting a little older, a little slower, a little just more pissed off, you know.
Yeah.
And so a family of 3,000 people though, my family's probably like maybe like 45, 50 people total. So like you're talking like invite, so you would be combining families to some degree, right? Like
To
they
some
they
degree, yeah.
they can't afford it, so you're going to kind of, I guess, like conquer them to some degree and give them your last name, right? Almost like Martinez would, right? Like in the South.
Right. Well, yeah, if you're going to go the Yarvin monarchist, then yes, you would effectively conquer the people around you or invite them into your kingdom. If you're going to go the more tribal Noam Chomsky, then you're going to name your something. You might not have kin or land, but it would be about it'd be
We
about the
are
size of a
one
small
of
town.
everybody. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So it'd be like more of like almost like a cult sort of where you just like are all that cult, right? Like you are
I like
all
to think of
A
them
or
as
whatever.
small towns, but yeah, yeah, effectively. Cult is the root word of culture, but yes,
Uh, So then information comes in the form of what? Like who gets the information? Like you have a town crier in the community now or something like that goes out into the land and fights the drones and shit and then comes back and like brings information, or like how is
yeah.
that
I mean,
speculated?
all the world outside of your bubble will be, I mean, active drone wars. I mean, you might be able
Right.
to get out and survive a little bit, but I mean, it's going to be active drone wars. You're going to have your
You'll
base.
have like drone deterrent rifles and stuff like they have currently in like Russia and such.
Yeah, I wonder how much humans will even be able to compete at that level. If it might not even just be robot on robot at that point, like my open source AGI versus your open source AGI, essentially. I don't even, I'm not even sure, because if you had, again, 5,000 little cardboard sized drones coming at you with C4, the fuck are you going to do with a laser, right? You can have a shotgun
Yeah.
or it's not going to do anything. Um, so you won't have the opportunity to fight. I actually, and this is, I think people will start to forget the outside world and then eventually create their own kind of myths and legends within their own little villages if we cannot get out to the stars. Because that's effectively what happened 10,000 years ago, right? When we lived on our
Right,
own
right, yeah.
stuff. But
Yeah, you have like Nordic mythology and things like that that were told around campfires, and that was kind of like what kept like past the time, sort of.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
We will have all of our needs taken care of. We will spend the time, I think, as like human pets playing live action video games.
Man, that is a wild concept. So I guess in the merger and acquisition world, to kind of just tie everything together here.
Bring it back.
um, what would be the businesses to start looking at for merger and acquisition? And like, because I know you want to like create a niche of some sort, right? You don't want to go after like all of the companies, laundromats and
Yeah,
painting
yeah, that's dumb. Yeah.
companies, and you want to kind of like focus in on like number one, what it is that you're passionate about, from what I understand.
Uh,
Um,
that
really?
yeah, passion led me down the wrong path, actually. I'll tell you that. Passion led me into some
Okay.
stupid businesses.
Well,
Yeah,
tell me what you think. What are the so like I don't know anything about merger and
yeah,
acquisition.
yeah.
I
Okay.
don't,
So
right?
how I picked my niche, I like literally went on NASDAQ. I analyzed every single company for the last 5 years, their quarterly earnings to their enterprise value, and determined something like 25 of the industries that had essentially a strong spread from what I could find on the street to what I could get on an IPO. So about a 5x spread, so 3x in the street and then 15x in NASDAQ. So I wanted to find that. I wanted to find something with low red tape that didn't have a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of defense companies out there that were good, but that's a lot of red tape. So I skipped defense, for example.
What's the difference between like the street value and the Nasdaq value? Are you going to like private equity for Nasdaq, and street value is like independent investor?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, street value. So there's five-ish levels of private equity, give or take. So you've got like I say street value because I want to insult everybody else that's competing with me, but it's like really your small to medium enterprise investor, SMB startup kind of land. Then you get into the lower middle market, the upper middle market, large cap, and then IPO. So lower middle market is around 2 million EBITDA, 2 million cash flow. The middle market's around 10, upper middle market's like 20 to 50, large cap's around 100, and then IPO can be anything above that. Um, what was the question again? Oh, how do you get started or what was, oh, the niche, right, right.
The niche, but also like, you can go and buy up a lot of these boomers companies, and you don't know anything about like how to buy up a company. You want to get into buying your first company. That's kind of the point of what it is that you're talking about, obviously. And then like where do you begin with that? Getting with a coach, getting with a community, asking the right questions, and then
Yeah,
like developing that niche, not necessarily your passion though, apparently. So
yeah.
what would you recommend as far as like niche? And then like how do you get that land amount to be able to protect your family, right? Because that's kind of like the overall point of like what we're trying to solve here is like protect ourselves, I guess. I didn't think about that in the beginning of the conversation, but I think that's important to address.
It's critical. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to keep it super simple, I would say go after home services companies. Those are
Okay,
folks with money or they service folks with money. And so that's not something that's going to go out of style. And then bring your deals to me, and then I will get you through the rest. If it's a good deal, I'll tell you if it's a good deal. If it's bad, and I'll buy that deal. If it's a bad deal, I'll tell you if it's a bad deal and it can go away. But just keep it super simple. Something in home services. So plumbing, HVAC, electrical.
HVAC,
Yeah,
roofing,
roofing, anything.
solar.
So it's a tough one, man. It
It
wasn't the
is, huh?
case 13 months ago, but it's the case now. Uh, so
Yes, so
that's
solar is an interesting one. So, like, as far as like solar is concerned, it would probably be a better asset if it was a vertically integrated company from sales to install with the maintenance on the back end, owned your own assets, had your
yeah,
own product.
maintenance is something that we would potentially do, right? If it was an older if it hit the other buy box, if it was an older company, if it had the employee count and the margin and the sales and it was steady and not falling. Maintenance is something. New construction's an absolute no for me, but maintenance is great. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And in particular, I really like emergency maintenance, not retail maintenance, because, if a tree falls in your house, if your house burns down, you got to fix it, right?
Unpredictable.
right? But if you have a shitty paint job, I don't know, it maybe gets
That
fixed.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Yeah. So niching down on what is it that rich people need you for, and then being able to acquire those companies. So why would somebody be willing to sell me their company if I'm just like nobody?
Yeah, well, you have money for starters. People are old; they want to get out. They don't want their business anymore. There's 1,000 reasons. You can chat GPT that. But if you don't have money, you go find people with money. And the easiest way to find people with money is to just find competitors of the business that you're looking to buy. So if you want to buy a roofing company, just actually, this is a little insider secret that I probably shouldn't share too much, but whatever, fuck it. When you go, if you're looking for investors, tell people you're an investor and you want to buy them. Because usually they don't want to sell, they want to purchase. That's the easiest way to create status. I'm not asking you for money. I want to give you money.
So what? Hold on, one more time.
So if you go to a roof, if so, say you talk to 100 roofers, right? Five of them might want to sell. You have 95 of them that don't want to sell at the moment.
Hmm.
50 of them are probably looking for good deals. And so if you ask them for money, fuck you, get out of my face. But if you say, I'm going to give you a bunch of money, whoa, you're an investor. Okay, let's talk deal flow. So the
Mm,
easiest way to find investors is to tell people you're an investor and ask to invest in them.
interesting.
Yeah.
Boy, what a mind world that is, huh? All right. Well, I hope everybody has good luck out there. Uh, enjoy the drone shows while they're not attacking us, I guess. Oh man. Well, I appreciate you, Mr. Samuel, for coming off the mountain. This has been another podcast with Basecamp Podcast with Elevate Elite. I want to dive more into mergers and acquisitions and having conversations about these things because it's not just home service businesses that are looking to be sold, and the creative side of like how to acquire some of these businesses or how to niche down, I think does fall in the devil in details as far as like researching, right? Where it's like what is similar to this thing that people are exiting that was big business 50, 60 years ago. Like sometimes I think about like what doesn't exist anymore that was like super popular back in the 60s, but it just kind of fell out of culture. Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't, it's not a thing that resonates with young people anymore. But it did, back in the 50s. And
Yeah.
so I think about that often. But Mr. Samuel, I appreciate your time, man. I didn't know we were gonna have this conversation today, but that's awesome. I'm glad you're the only, and I'm not the only one thinking about this stuff though.
Yeah,
It does,
that
it
took a
does make me
fun
feel a
turn,
little
man.
better.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate you hopping on the AI stuff with me. I normally just talk finance. That was a lot of fun.
I mean, honestly, dude, like that's where it's headed, honestly. Like a lot of this stuff, people think it's like AI slop or whatever, but it's like it's getting to that point to where I do believe there will be some regression on technology. People will not be online as perpetually as much as they are currently. It'll start becoming a thing, a fad. It already is to put your phone away and like be part of the society that you're in and be present in the moment and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Like the things that you mentioned, like you go back to once you get your billions of dollars, you go back to being present and being mindful and part of your community and helping others and giving back and things like that, right? And so, unfortunately, I think that is where we're going to have to go before we get our billions of dollars, but probably should grab some of that money on the way up too.
Yeah, get that bag, protect your family. A couple years of hard work, and then infinite paradise is coming.
And 2 to 3 years feels like it's going to happen so fast, but I guess it'll happen regardless if you let it happen or not,
That's right. That's
huh?
right.
Right on. Well, where can they find you, man? Where can they get a hold of you? As far as like if they have a deal or something they want to bring your way, what's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, this is gonna sound super Gen Z millennial, but Facebook is my favorite place, honestly, to do business. So
Same here.
facebook.com/dragon stepping is my link. You can email me, Samuel at Kabiri Group, CABIRIGROUP.com, or check out the website for the roll up is protopiancapital.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Like, I look forward
Awesome.
to having another conversation.
Hell yeah, Donovan. Thanks again.
Right
Cheers.
on. Talk to you guys soon.